Hey, welcome back to another episode of the She's Making an Impact podcast. I'm your host, Racheal Ngom. Have you ever struggled with burnout of working way too hard, getting sick, or just feeling overwhelmed? Maybe like your worthiness is tied up in your work, all those things. So we have such a great conversation for you today. I brought on Racheal Cook. She's an award-winning business strategist, the host of the Promote Yourself to CEO podcast, and best-selling author. And she's on a mission to end entrepreneurial poverty for women. And so in this episode of the podcast, we talk about her journey through burnout, having 10 panic attacks in 10 weeks, and now having a business where she's working 25 hours a week and prioritizing her family. So let's dive into the episode. Hey, Racheal, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Racheal.
Yes, super excited you're here. Let's start off. Just tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
I am a business growth strategist, the founder of the CEO Collective, and the host of Promote Yourself to CEO, my podcast. And I have been helping women entrepreneurs to start and scale primarily service-based businesses for the past 14, 15 years now.
Wow. So you started when you were 4. Yes.
Yes, exactly. I started as a I went directly into the consulting world when I finished my MBA in 2005. I was recruited directly into small business consulting. So I was working with small businesses in that they were not, Coca-Cola, but they were still multi-million-dollar companies.
Mm-hmm.
And in my journey in the consulting world, I burned out pretty quickly in the first couple years of working in the consulting world. Anyone who has been in the consulting world knows that they bring in people out of MBA programs and they make you work 80 hours a week. You're never home. You're always on the road. Like you're basically living in your car or in an airplane out of a suitcase. You're just grinding a lot. So I hit burnout pretty quick in that world. And what happened for me was I ended up taking a leave of absence from my consulting career, was on a yoga mat in a local yoga studio, becoming really good friends with my yoga teacher because she was now my yoga teacher / life coach / therapist. And she looked at me and she said, Rach, I know you don't want to go back to corporate consulting or, the consulting company you were with before, but do you think you could help my yoga studio? And I was kind of like, oh, yeah, let me see your financials. Let's talk about all these different things. And it was a light bulb moment for me because I realized there were owner operated businesses that needed access to someone with my background. But in 2008, there really weren't any people talking to these owner operated kind of micro businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I kind of started my career, was recovering from burnout, realizing I had a skill set that was in high demand for these small business owners, and got the opportunity to kind of design my life the way that I really wanted it, in a way that was more sustainable with a lot less hustle and no more burnout.
I love that because the hustle is real. And when you say burnout, that could the degree of burnout, because I saw you had 10 panic attacks in 10 weeks. Like
Yes.
that's like severe burnout. We're not talking about like I got a cold now is tired.
No, we're talking about clinical burnout, where for me, I had undiagnosed anxiety. I did not realize I had anxiety. I just always thought I was like a type A overachiever type of person, which I know a lot of women I talk to can relate to that. Like,
Oh yeah.
we were the ones who were in all the leadership positions through school and then got straight A's and checked off every box you could. But I got to the point where I was literally, I can remember I was driving down I-95, which is I was leaving DC, headed back to Atlanta in my little Prius. And I was having a panic attack with like these semi trucks passing me. I was on the interstate and I was just like, I'm going to die out here. I literally thought I was having a heart attack.
Wow.
And so that's when my anxiety kind of came to the forefront. I realized I had anxiety disorder. I wasn't aware of that before. And I also was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue, which if anybody does not know what that is, yeah, you're like flat on the floor. It's like your body stops functioning, and trying to find the energy to just do anything is pretty much impossible. And I find that a lot of women identify with that combination of challenges. And usually it's because we were the high achievers, go, 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 do all the things, running on adrenaline
Yep.
for, our entire early life. And then we hit a point sometime in our late 20s, early 30s where we're just like, crap, I can't do this anymore.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
like, how did you know? That was my story. I had a 1-year-old and was building a 6-figure business in network marketing, and I totally burnt out, adrenal fatigue, gained 30 pounds, got sick every single month. And my son was like, Mom, let's play, let's go outside. And like the most active 1-year-old you can imagine. And I was like laying on the couch and tried to like make a little house for him so I didn't have to chase him. And it did not work very well. It was awful. So, like, I feel the pain. So what did you change?
What did I change? I changed everything. When I decided I was not going to go back to my consulting job, one, that was a huge mindset shift for me because I was leaving behind a 6-figure career. And for somebody who's super ambitious and who has put all their worthiness in their ambition,
Yes.
telling your
Ooh.
family that, oh, this track I've been on where I've made you so incredibly proud of me, by the way, I'm saying no to all of it now.
Yep.
And then my husband and I, at the time, he's a school teacher. So in the US, you do not make much as a school teacher. We were
Nope.
like, so we're going to go from my 6-figure career plus him as a school teacher to he's going to support us. We're going to sell everything extra we have. We're going to downsize our lifestyle. And I'm going to take like a year to figure out what I actually want. Um, I literally had my family asking me if I needed like psychiatric help. They were very concerned about me.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening for me is I really took the time to get clear about what I want. What I discovered was, for me at least, I had built this career path on everyone else's definition of success for me. And I
Hmm.
had never taken the time to define what success actually meant to
Yeah.
me. I was basing it on what my parents had kind of shared with me, or my academia had shared with me, or all these professors. Like, I always had these other people who were like, oh, you're so good at that, you should keep going in this direction. I never had anybody actually say, well, what do you really want your life to look like?
Hmm.
And so taking that time to pull back, to like really reduce all the pressure, and then to get clear about what I actually wanted was, I mean, I'm so grateful that it all happened for me,
Yeah.
because it allowed me to figure out a few things. I figured out I did like the work I was doing. I love business strategy. I love a good spreadsheet. Like, nothing makes me happier than like digging into numbers and analytics and figuring out how things are going to come together. I'm a complete nerd. Like, it's a puzzle for me. And so that lights me up. But what didn't light me up was working with organizations that I didn't align with. Like, some of
Hmm.
my prior clients, to give you examples, were industrial pump manufacturers, or or companies who went in and put in all the utilities for new development. Like, not very fun, not world changing type of stuff. There's no mission. And I realized when my yoga teacher came to me at the time, I was like, I really love the work she's doing. It was changing my life at the time. And like, truly, yoga, meditation, learning, personal development, these were the things that for me were completely helping me turn my life around and understand what I actually wanted out of my life. And so I was like, how do I make more of these businesses successful? We don't need another industrial pump manufacturer. Like, this is not exciting. But
Yeah.
what is exciting is thinking about a whole new generation of people learning how to get in touch with their emotions and learning how to live in alignment with what really matters to them. So
Hmm.
for me, that was the shift. It was just taking the time to get clear about what my definition of success was going to be. And I just decided, I was financially successful very early, but I was unhappy and unhealthy. So I
Yeah.
realized I needed to focus on being happy and healthy first.
Yep.
And the financial success wasn't even a part of the equation, other than I knew I had some financial benchmarks I wanted to hit.
That's huge because I think you hear, especially if you're like doing personal development, you're listening to podcasts, you hear everyone say like you should strive to be multimillionaire, do this. And in reality, like what will make you happy? What will make you fulfilled? Like will having $1 million in the bank make you happy and fulfilled? Or is it having this stress reduced life living on the beach with your family or like whatever that looks like, but what do you really want? Because what someone wants might not be what you want, you know?
Yeah. Well, and money is just an amplifier. So it
Totally.
amplifies what there already is.
Yeah.
If you have more money and you are somebody who is generous with your money and you're generous with your family and you're giving back to the world, having more money is just going to allow you to do more of that.
Yep.
But if you're somebody who is a workaholic and having more money just builds the need for more money because your career or your business becomes this cash eating monster that you're constantly chasing,
Yep.
then all money is going to do is continue to amplify that.
Yep.
It's not actually going to bring you the fulfillment. So you actually have to figure out the fulfillment and personal success piece first, because money is a great in that it gives you more options, it gives you more
Yeah.
choices, but
Yep.
it doesn't actually fix anything related to happiness or fulfillment or your health.
Yeah.
If
I
you
saw
are
there was
focused on the wrong things.
yeah, I saw there was a study that said like once your basic needs are met, and in the US that's typically like $75,000 a year. Once you earn more than $75,000 a year, there's no correlation in like an increase in happiness
Yeah.
past that point.
Yeah. And I definitely have experienced that, and
Mhm.
this is part of also why when I had this kind of reckoning for myself around what is it that I really want, if you go up the ranks in corporate consulting or any major company, any major corporate career, you start to see the same patterns. And I was looking at people who were 20, 30 years ahead of me. And what I realized is they all had amazing houses. They
Mm.
all had awesome cars. They had all the toys in the world, but
Mm.
most of them had been divorced a couple times
Mm.
and didn't see their families. And they spent all of their extra time working. Like they were so defined by work that
Yeah.
they had done that at the expense of everything else.
Yeah.
And these were the people who I just looked ahead at that and I was like, that's not the success that I want.
Yep.
I don't put my success being defined by I have a 6,000 square foot house
Yep.
or I'm driving the latest BMW or whatever. Like none of that mattered to me when it came down to it. What did matter to me is I realized I wanted to become a mom, but I
Mhm.
didn't want to have to choose between my career and becoming a mom. And I
Yeah.
got to the point where I was getting those types of questions. Now, keep in mind, it's supposed to be considered illegal to ask women these questions in a workplace,
Yeah.
but it was very much one of the topics that any of my managers would dance around because they knew I had just gotten married. They were kind of dancing around. So, are you going to take any time off soon? Are you guys starting a
Mhm.
family? Like, those were the types of things that were starting to come on my periphery. And I realized I had to make some big decisions or else they were going to be made for me. And I
Yep.
really didn't want to go down that path.
Yeah. So one of the things you said is like telling your parents that you're giving up that job. And I think a lot of us find like our worthiness and the praise of the accomplishments. Maybe it's not necessarily like the bigger car, the bigger house, but like the praise from like close friends and family members. So how did you get over that?
I learned that it was okay for me to take time away from my family,
Okay.
to be quite honest. Like,
Yeah.
when you are going through a big identity shift, and this
Mhm.
was my experience, I was going through this major identity shift, and it wasn't just for me, but it was also for them. Like, their identity was being shifted in relation to me because they had really enjoyed being known as Rachel's parents.
Mm.
So, for me, I realized I needed to actually create space between myself and my family. I needed stronger boundaries between myself and my family.
Hmm.
And that was really hard for someone who was very close to my family. But
Yeah.
I realized that if I didn't intentionally make space and focus on what my needs were, that their concern for me, we'll say it's concern,
Hmm.
which at the time just felt like criticism of me,
Totally. Yeah.
it would pull me back into something that I knew wasn't working. It would pull me back into a toxic work environment. It would pull me back into overworking. It would pull me back into thinking that I should just get over the fact that I don't feel good all the time.
Hmm.
Like I got a lot of, you're only in your 20s. There's no reason for you to feel bad. And I'm sitting here going, actually, according to my lab results,
It's a problem.
it's a problem. I'm not making this up. It's not in my head.
Right.
So I've found this is something a lot of women go through when we are kind of pushing against the status quo, whether that's the status quo in society or the status quo in our family or in our communities, in our relationships. Sometimes you have to put a lot of space in between yourself and other people when they aren't getting it, when they aren't on board. If they're sharing their concern, but it feels like criticism,
Right.
it, to me, it felt like I have to, physically distance myself
Hmm.
in order to make sure that I'm focused on what I actually need instead of constantly getting pulled back into the way that they thought it should be.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you work 25 hours a week. So what does that look like? What does your schedule look like? You
Yeah.
ran like this awesome business, and most people think to have an awesome business, you need to put in a lot of time, but you're showing us that's not true.
Yeah. Well, when I started my business in 2008, I started and I kind of was bringing on the same habits I had learned in the consulting world, which is I was working a lot at first. I was putting in a lot of time. I was doing everything myself. And then about 6 months later, I got pregnant with twins. So
Wow.
I really had like the come to Jesus meeting with myself where it's like, okay, well, here I am, just started this business. We're 6 months into the business. Now I'm pregnant. Now these twins are going to be here soon. Oh, going on bed rest. Like, oh, okay, here's what it looks like to raise newborn twins. Um, so I realized I had to drastically alter things for myself. I had to make some big shifts from the way I had thought the business would go. So I had thought the business would look a lot like the way I had done consulting previously, which was boots on the ground, going into locations, talking to business owners like face to face, spending a lot of time on site, all of those types of things, spending a lot of time individually and
Hmm.
doing a lot of very customized type of work for each person I was working with. And
Right.
then I realized it didn't have to be that way. I
Hmm.
realized
Yeah.
that a lot of the businesses I was working with, a lot of their problems were really similar. So I could develop things that we could implement across the board. I realized that a lot of the work I was doing, I didn't have to
Top
be
of the sink.
boots on the ground with. I could be having phone calls. Now, this was before Zoom. So this was, Skype was what was available then.
Hmm.
And it wasn't super high quality because not everybody had super high speed internet,
Yeah.
but it's what we had. So between Skype and conference lines, I was able to keep my business going. And in fact, a lot of people didn't even realize I was pregnant and on bed rest because they couldn't see me. We were just talking via phone.
Yeah.
Um, and those were some shifts I made early on that allowed me to set myself up for a 25-hour work week. So when I had my twins and decided to get back into my business, I made the conscious decision. I said, I only want to work about 4 or 5 hours a day so that I can have the rest of the day with my kids.
Yeah.
What do I need to do in order to do that? For
Hmm.
me, that meant I needed to outsource anything that wasn't essential for me personally to take care of.
Yep.
So right away, I knew that when it came to any sort of admin type of work, so bookkeeping, emails, scheduling, anything like that, I needed to outsource that. And I did. My very first hire was an assistant and a babysitter.
Yes. Necessary.
And that was necessary. And that allowed me to stay focused on the work that only I at the time could do, which was working with my clients,
Yep.
developing content either to grow my business or to sell within my business, or going out there and making sales. Those were the things that I needed to focus on. Everything else I could outsource.
Yeah.
So 25 hours a week for me has always looked really, I mean, it's a really simple work week. Like Mondays are my day where I'm doing strategy, I'm doing my CEO level planning, running my team, etc. Tuesdays through Thursdays, depending on the week, I have client weeks where I'm actually working with my clients in my programs, or I have content weeks where I'm doing interviews or creating paid content or creating free content. And I alternate the two of those. Everything else I've outsourced to people on my team. And what that allows me to do is, like, today, swim team is starting at 4:00. So I'll be there to take my 8-year-old to swim team and hang out with the kids the rest of the night.
I love it. I think that's so important. Like, figure out the vision of your life, what you want, and then build your business around that. That's what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing you
And
say.
I think that's something that we have to share, that there's more options out there other than working 40 hours a week or more. In fact,
Totally.
the more I talk to people around the world, I hear, like, a lot of people in Europe, the idea of working more than 30, 35 hours a week. They're like, what's wrong with you Americans? And I'm like,
They don't like to work. I mean, we lived in France for 2 years, and it's like they love their long lunches and their vacation time, and they don't love to work in general.
but it's actually amazing if you are an American and you have a chance to experience those other cultures. So my husband and I stayed in
Yes.
Brazil for a while. My husband
Yeah.
has family in Brazil, so we were there 6 months before I finished my master's degree. And I was watching how they lived. And it was so amazing to me, because I'm coming from this background of, you go in Sunday night into your office to get ready for Monday morning. And here are these Brazilians who are like, nope, weekends are 100% for play. You're
Yep.
enjoying taking a long, like you said, these long lunches. You
Yep.
enjoy your time with your family. They weren't sitting there with their cell phones in their hands, or at the time, their Blackberries in their
Yeah.
hands
Yeah.
nonstop. Just a level of detachment from career, and also the fact that career wasn't so defining for who they were as humans.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Like in France, like we don't talk about money, and they don't talk about career. Like it's rarely what do you do like for your job? Like that's typically not a topic of conversation.
yeah, it's
And
more
it's so
like, what
funny
are
how
you
Americans
interested
are
in?
like so focused on that, like, yeah, what the other parts of who you are, you're not defined by your
Yeah.
career.
What football team are you cheering for right now? Or,
Yes. Yeah.
did you see the latest XYZ fashion show movie? Did you read this book? Like, whatever it is. And it was a big shift for me to see that. And it's always been
Yeah.
something interesting now that I have clients around the world, seeing the difference between my, like, American clients and clients around the world who just look at their lives so differently.
Yep.
Um, and it's a very clearly, like, a very westernized American type of problem, struggling with burnout and
Totally.
overworking.
Totally. Yeah. So what would you say? So we like figure out our vision, we schedule our business around that. What would you say is something like tangible that we could walk away with today to
Yeah.
avoid burnout, have more just time for ourselves and to feel more balanced?
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'm a huge fan of having a model calendar. That's how I create my 25-hour week. I have a whole episode on my podcast about it.
Awesome.
But I think one of the biggest things when it comes to aligning your vision with what you want your life to look like is making sure that you're finding people to support that vision and who aren't
Mm,
trying to kind of force you into their version.
yeah.
This is a challenge I see with a lot of entrepreneurs right now, because there's so many people out there as experts, as coaches, as celebrity entrepreneurs who are selling their version of success, and they
Hmm.
only have one model to follow.
Hmm.
And if you deviate from that model, then they tell you, like, oh, you just don't want it bad enough. You have mindset problems, this,
Hmm.
that, and the other.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, not everybody's trying to get to a 7-figure business in just a couple of years. Some people
Yeah.
are happy to take their time to build the business that they want. Some people want it faster. Some people are okay with doing it slower. Some people want to value their life now instead of waiting until, 10 or 20 years down the road to experience vacations and time off. So
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things is to surround yourself with people who understand what you're trying to create.
Yep.
Because if you don't have that level of support, like I said, you'll have a lot of people who are sharing their concerns, but it just feels like criticism.
Yep.
Or they'll be trying to give you solutions, but they can only give solutions from their lens of, this is how things work.
Yep.
The truth is, there's a million ways things can work.
Yep.
There's a million ways you can set up your business. There's a million ways you can set up your life. So if you have people who understand what you're trying to achieve and who are themselves not doing things in like a traditional way, then you're more likely to get to the creative solutions that you actually need instead
Yeah.
of just getting the same answers that they're giving everybody else.
For sure. Yeah, I think like when selecting a mentor, like seeing who has the life that you want. So like if I'm gonna work with a coach, a business coach, like the business coach I work with now, she has kids and she takes off 5.5 months per year. And I'm like, perfect. And runs
Sounds
a
good.
$20 million business, you know? So I'm
Yeah.
like I wouldn't like I love Gary Vaynerchuk, but I take some of his advice and then the rest of it I'm like, well, I don't like I love working, but I don't want to work as hard as you do and not see my family, you know?
Yeah. And I think this is really important. I remember when I was first looking for support myself, one, there weren't as many women doing any sort of business coaching, business strategy. It was just super male dominated. And I remember going to things like events and conferences and saying like, okay, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. And they would just kind of look at me like I had three heads. Like, what are you talking about? That you want to be home with your kids, just hire an au pair and don't worry about it. And I was like, but no, that's not the value system I'm operating under.
For sure.
So I can't I can't say enough how important it is to find people who align with you and your values.
Yeah.
And if you are taking advice from people, like Gary Vee's a great example. Like we're not hurting him at all by talking about him
I
as a
adore
brand.
him. Like I've read
Yeah.
all of his books and I adore him.
And
Yeah.
he's such a great example for making sure you're aligning with values what matters. Like
Yep.
he talks very openly about how hard he works, that
Yep.
he'll work harder than anybody, that he
Yep.
works all the time. And he also has talked openly about how he knows that not everybody wants or can do that.
Yep.
And I think that's where we have to have nuance in the conversations when we're choosing mentors.
Mm-hmm.
Is we might have people who like Gary Vee, who we pick and choose a few things that they're saying that we really resonate with, but we also have to run it through our own filter, which is, does this align with my version of success? So if I go and try to implement all of Gary Vee's marketing strategies, will that actually fit my version of success or will it take me off track?
Yep.
So for me personally, I don't have the bandwidth or the team or anything to do a lot of the strategies he recommends because it
Right.
requires volume. I
Yeah.
don't have volume. I don't have volume of time. I don't have volume of team. I don't have volume of money either, Gary. So I can't do what he does, which is have a camera crew follow him around all day long to create, like he has a 20, 25 person content team. All they do is follow
Wow.
him around to create content.
It's pretty cool.
Well, if I were trying to imitate that, it would be nearly impossible for me. Like that's the entire size of my whole team.
Right.
I would be pulling them all away just to follow me around and make clips of the things that I happen to say.
Yep.
So we have to make sure that we're really looking like a 360-degree view around these mentors and what they're doing and is what they're saying actually work for us. Now, is there something he shared that could be helpful?
Totally.
Absolutely. Like there's tons of little nuggets he shared that I will then go try out and say, oh, well, this took no time. It didn't take a ton of my bandwidth and it works. So that makes sense. But I always have to run advice through my own filter and make sure it makes sense for my situation. Because if it doesn't, then I'm just going to be beating myself up that I'm not as good as Gary Vee. Like
Yep.
no one's as good as Gary Vee. That's going to be
Totally.
an impossible standard.
Yep. Absolutely. What's one of the best books you've read?
Some of the best books I've read. I love the book Essentialism.
Oh, yeah.
I am a huge fan of Essentialism by Greg McKeown. If you have not read the book, I highly recommend it. And for anyone who is wanting to streamline and simplify your life, your business, any of the above, I think it's just a must read. I mean, the core concept for it is that you really have to focus on what is most important and everything else just kind of falls away.
Yep.
I kind of follow that approach with a lot of things in my life. I have a capsule wardrobe. I have a simple life. We don't have a lot of complicated anything, but with my business too, like I like keeping things really simple. Because for me, keeping it simple and strategic is what has given me the most freedom.
Absolutely. I love that. What does it mean to you to make an impact?
What it means to me to make an impact is hearing stories from my clients, like my husband was able to leave his job,
Yeah.
or I was able to pay for my kids to go to camp this summer, or I was able to let go of this side job I've been having while I've been building my business, and now I'm full-time in my business.
Hmm.
Um, Hearing my clients be able to create the freedom they really want for themselves, that's impact to me. And I'd
Yeah.
rather be able to impact a few people in really meaningful ways than focus on follower count.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Where can we connect with you?
You can always find me on my podcast, Promote Yourself to CEO. All the places that podcasts are found. And you can also follow me on Instagram. In fact, if you're loving the conversation we've been having, then take a quick screenshot, tag me at Racheal.cook. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. And I'd love to chat with you on Instagram.
Amazing. Racheal, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.